Right, so my tip 7 is just to say Gantt charts are brilliant. And it's a bit of an odd tip, but they are great. And if I had a whole day, I could convince you that you can't live without Gantt charts. I love Gantt charts. I don't know whether I can get you to love Gantt charts in just this 45 minutes, but I might be able to. I've got 3 reasons why I think Gantt charts are brilliant, and there they are. So the first one is just communication, just to be able to show somebody a plan, because when you see it drawn out, it makes sense, doesn't it? And you can look at it, and people intuitively understand Gantt charts. And even if it's a huge, complicated project, they can see their part of it and how it fits in. And so you can say to them, that's your bit. And if you run late, everybody else is going to be pushed late after you, and they can see that. And if there's float, they can see how much float they've got. So I think they're just intuitively great. The second reason is resource planning. I just want to show you that on here. And I'm going to come back to that monitoring progress thing in a minute. But resource planning, what you can do is you can add up the resources you need. So what I've done on here is I've put how many people, or it might be how many hours I need to spend on each of those. So maybe recruiting a manager, I have to do, sort of write an advert, then I go on holiday for a bit. And then I come back and I have to wait then. And then perhaps here I do some interviewing and a bit more second interviews here or something like that. So for each task, I can put how many hours I think. And then I can add it up and I can see that I need to spend 11 hours in that week or whatever. And you can even have a graph, which is known as a resource profile, which shows where you're having to do your work. And you can see that this project, at the highest it goes up to is 18 hours, so that's probably okay. Although I think any project that goes above about 10 hours in a given week starts to become a problem. I mean, it depends whether you have a day job as well as being project manager. You probably do. So if you're trying to do one or more projects as well as your normal job, you need to keep an eye on the resources. So Gantt charts are really good for resource planning. You could even do a Gantt of Gantts. So if you've got, say, 10 projects you're trying to do, you could add them all up and just check that it's possible to do them all. Just a thought. So that's the second reason. The third reason was monitoring the progress. So we've got communication, we've got resource planning by looking vertically, and we've got monitoring progress. So this particular one, how is it doing? I've coloured in the ones I've done. So how am I doing? I'm behind, aren't I? I'm not keeping up with the now line. So what you do is you have this now line that moves along, and each week or each month it moves along, and then you colour in. Colouring in is the best bit of project management. And you have to try and keep up with the now line. So you can see immediately there's a problem. This is what you want to see. You want to see that. You won't often see that. Most projects are, seem to be behind. For the reasons I mentioned earlier on, it's difficult to get ahead of time, because how are you going to do something quicker than you thought? Unless you're just a pessimist, that could happen. But it means that you can instantly see. So if I only had 1 minute to check on somebody else's project, if I only had time to ask one question, definitely my question would be, can I have a look at your coloured-in Gantt chart? And if they say, what's a Gantt chart? I would worry, because it means they have no idea what they're doing at all. They've just got no plan. So you would want to see a Gantt chart to know where you were and whether you're on schedule. I was asked to do a course a couple of years ago for a company that make wind farms. And making wind farms is actually very tricky because you have to calculate where to put the windmill things to get the maximum energy. And they have this fluid flow modelling software that looks at the power you get because of the shape of the hills and stuff. And they're all ultra boffins, these people. And I was quite worried about the course because I thought, surely they'll know all this. But anyway, I emailed them an outline of what we would do. And it came back saying, thank you very much, looks marvellous. The only thing is, you don't need to do Gantt charts because we don't use Gantt charts in our company. And I thought, well, that's weird. So I mailed back saying, OK, fine. But just out of curiosity, how do you monitor progress against your plan? How do you know whether you're still on schedule to finish on time? And there was a week of silence. And then this email came back saying, OK, do the Gantt charts. It was like, yes. Although I was a little bit disappointed because I hoped they had something really great. I hoped they were going to say, yes, we use a double foldback ratio percentage analysis curve. It's much better than a Gantt chart. And I was really looking forward to seeing this incredibly clever thing. But actually, they had nothing. So we did Gantt charts, and now all the wind farms are on time, thanks to me. But it was good, and you know, sure enough, they didn't know about them, and I was quite surprised by that. But that would be my one question I would ask, is can I have a look at your coloured in Gantt chart? Because you could immediately see, and the Gantt chart forces everything else really, because if they've got that, they must have listed the tasks out. They must have estimated them. They must have worked out what the critical path is. By the way, I've been a bit naughty on here to fit it on. I've got a floating task above the critical path. You're not supposed to do that really, but such is life. But they must have worked out the critical path and the float. They must have done everything. So if you can see the Gantt chart, it means they must have done all their planning correctly. But also it gives you an instant view of what they're doing and whether they're keeping up. So, you know, that's all you need, is a Gantt chart for every project, and you've got a total view of everything. And in fact, we were talking about Bournemouth Council earlier on, but they have now got a list of every project. There's about 500 projects of significant size going on. And at the moment, they're getting a Gantt chart made of every project, so they can see where they're all at instantly. And the plan is to have them on SharePoint, so you can just press a button on any project you want to see, and there will be its Gantt chart. And wouldn't that be great? That's the dream.
You know, you were saying about having a Gantt chart of your Gantt chart.
Yeah.
How would you propose doing that? Because that's something I have to do when we have like multiple projects going on, and I have to manage other people's time to make sure
Yeah.
that we're not using too much resource of one person over 3 projects, when actually we need to use all their time in just one project. How do you manage that?
That's a really good question. And there isn't time to answer it now. No, there is. The difficulty is that what you've got is a cube, really, because you've got all your projects, you've got the people who are going to do them, and you've got time. So because everything we do is kind of 2D in our world, you can only really look at slices of the cube. So the sort of starting point would be to have all the projects and then either people or time. And you've got to choose which one you want to look at. So you could, for example, have projects and people, and you could do a little spreadsheet of how much time is required for each person. And then when you add it up, you can say that the total time required for Fred is too much, because he's involved in 7 different projects, and it's just more time than he's got. And then you know he's the bottleneck. So then what you do is you take the slice of the cube that is Fred. So you take a slice called Fred's projects, and then you can have all the projects, and you can have time across there. And then you can have a Gantt chart with just all Fred's bits on. And what you'll probably have to do is have to postpone half the projects because Fred's so busy. And we know then we can't have all the projects that we wanted. By the way, Fred is usually the IT department, but it can be HR. Usually, because they get involved in most projects. But you won't know till you do the analysis. So once you know it's IT, what you want to know is just, can I see the IT Gantt of Gantts? And they're the only one that matter because they're the bottleneck. So probably you'll have to postpone some projects because IT are just too busy to do everything that you want. Unless you want to put more resources in, but that's not usually an option. And then everybody else can plan around that. So I think the key is to work out what your bottleneck is first. There are, you can do it using a sort of a database, but the problem is it's got to be visual. So you've got to be able to see, we need to move this. And of course then, when a new project comes in, you can say, well, in order to do that, we're going to have to postpone one of these other 2. Which ones do you want postponed? And we're back to the idea of the project manager as the facilitator rather than the decision maker. Because the project manager will say, well, I'll do whatever you want. But as you can see from this, we've got a bottleneck with IT. So do you want this one or do you want this one? And all they'll do is flag up that decision. But they won't promise to deliver them all. And at the moment, IT, for example, are probably just saying yes to everything when they can't deliver. Because they probably haven't got a Gantt of Gantts. And if they do that, they're only giving themselves trouble later. So what they should do is they should draw up a Gantt of Gantts and they should say, look, guys, we can't do everything. Which one do you want first? It's up to you. I'll do whatever you like. You've got to choose. And in this specialised case of local government, it would actually give you the ability to say no for the first time ever to elected members. Because you could say, this is what we're working on. If you want this new extra idea you're bringing up, that's fine, but you can't have one of these others. So which one do you want? And then at last, you could get them to back off because they probably go, oh no, okay, forget my idea. But at the moment, you end up saying yes to everything, and then you can't deliver. But the problem is you can't prove that you can't deliver. So I don't know if that answers that. But so an Excel spreadsheet is the way, but it's a 3D problem. So anyway, Gantt charts, So just to sum that one up, why are Gantt charts brilliant? What were my 3 things? Communication, resource planning by looking vertically, and monitoring by colouring in. Yes, there we are. Ah, you didn't expect to be quizzed halfway through, did you? Whew.